In September of 2019, August, September, I started getting kind of just like weird IBS symptoms, but very light, like something as simple as a gargly stomach, like when you're hungry. But it would be so consistent. It would be every day. And it's something that I had never dealt with before. And your mind just kind of goes, you're like, oh, that's weird. Like, is it just because I'm getting older? Like I'm in my 30s now? Is it my diet? Your mind doesn't go to the worst. So those were like my first early symptom, just IBS. And then probably about a month later, I started seeing blood. And that was alarming because, of course, it's blood. But again, you don't want to freak out. So I gave it a couple weeks and I was like, well, maybe it's a hemorrhoid, maybe it's, whatever. Let's see if this is consistent and persistent. And it was. So, of course, I went to an urgent care. I didn't have insurance at the time. So I went to my local urgent care where I was told it was probably just hemorrhoids, probably a fissure. And I got my answer. And so I was like, well, great. I even remember kind of laughing in the office and being like, well, I don't want to have like colon cancer or something. And the doctor even saying to me and reassuring me, I don't think you have cancer. Like, I think that's a little outlandish to even assume that. I think you're fine. And I was like, well, great. So how long do I expect to have this? Can I expect to see this? She was like, well, it depends. She kind of gave me a really loose-ended answer of like, typically a couple weeks and it'll heal up. But if it's a fissure, like a tear, if you don't change your diet and eat more fiber, that could be chronic. And, you could just see blood for months. There was no exam done. Urgent cares don't do thorough exams. There was no actual blood testing or anything like that. So I took her for her word. I was like, okay, this is what I've got now. In February of 2019, so what is that? 5, 6 months before my symptoms started, I had lost my mom suddenly. She died of a heart attack 3,000 miles away. I wasn't there. So I had a lot of people tell me this was grief. And it wasn't until I actually saw my first doctor when I got my health insurance in January, where he was like, you've been through a lot, I wouldn't worry about this. I truly think, it's just grief. And he's the doctor. My first primary care in January was the one who told me I needed a psychological intervention of some sort because I was panicked at that point. I mean, at that point, it's January. I'm finally excited. I get to see a doctor and be like, I can get blood work done. I can get all these tests done. And he runs the blood work and it all comes back normal, which was a relief for me. I was like, well, that's a good sign. And then that was all he decided he needed to know that I was probably just crazy, grieving, in my head, probably exasperated all these issues. But, with these symptoms came the anxiety. I was never a hypochondriac. I was never one of those people who thought I was always sick. It wasn't until I had these really, crazy symptoms that I was like, oh, something is wrong, which I think is your body telling you something's wrong. There's no reason for me to doubt that. And I was like, this is a symptom of colon cancer. I know I'm 29, but, I kept bringing it up to them. I mentioned it multiple times. I mentioned it at the urgent care. It's the first thing I thought of when I saw blood. I'm very smart. I like to consider, that I am very in touch with my body. I understand these things. And no doctor was hitting back with anything like, oh, that's silly. Like, there's no way that would be colon cancer. And of course, I Googled my symptoms. I was on Google. I think at the height of my anxiety and my symptoms, I was on Google almost every night before bed. Even just trying to find someone else who maybe had gone through this. I would be on YouTube and I'd be like, these symptoms, Googling them and YouTubing them and searching them. And one of the first few things after, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis was colon cancer. I mean, at this point, I'd been bleeding since September. It's now March. I was chronically constipated. I couldn't go to the bathroom. And when I could, it was just blood. So I see my gastroenterologist finally, and he kind of echoes what my primary care said. Well, you're young, you're a healthy girl, you have no history of colon cancer in your family. These symptoms are very common, Amanda. there's, we'll test you for ulcerative colitis, we'll test you for Crohn's, which are both very serious chronic diseases that you want to, be taken seriously for. And he was like, but the odds of it's colon cancer are so slim. So don't let your mind go there. But how can it not? How can it not when the symptoms are not getting any better? They are consistent and they are persistent. So I'm like, okay. He was like, we'll get you in for a colonoscopy. And, the midst of all of this, my anxiety is at an all-time high. I've never dealt with anxiety. I've never dealt with panic attacks. I've never, ever in my life dealt with it. And I sympathize with anyone who deals with it on a daily basis or deals with this, like all the time, because it is the worst thing that you could deal with. I mean, my life just felt, I felt so alone and lost and just confused. And I was like, I feel like I'm going to die. And I feel like no one's listening to me. And then finally I got the colonoscopy scheduled in July. So this was May. So I had to go 2 more months. So I go for my colonoscopy in July. And of course, there's hoops and hurdles to get there. It finally gets approved. And I remember being like, okay, like I've gotten this far. We're now almost a year of symptoms and I'm at the home stretch. I'm going to get my answers. And I remember like taking a video on my phone when I was waiting for my friend to pick me up to take me to the hospital. And I was just like, I'm going to get my answer today. Like,
I think that's the biggest thing. I don't want to worry anymore. I don't want to wonder. I don't want to be fearful, and I don't want to not know anymore. I want to know what's going on, and I want to know a plan of action to take so that I can go back to myself.
And so I go to the hospital and have my colonoscopy, and all the nurses were lovely. They were so kind. And they were all super reassuring, like, hey, like, you're going to be fine. Don't sweat it. And then once they hook up, the drugs to you and you're like loopy, you're great, you're golden. I'm like, let's just get this going. When I woke up from the colonoscopy, I remember looking around the room and the nurses were there and they were kind of just like quiet. And then the doctor comes in and he kind of just like, and bedside manner, sure, whatever. I know like doctors are very clinical and like to the point, but it was just like, we found a large tumor in your sigmoid colon. He said it was a large tumor, which we didn't know how large until my surgery, which is crazy, but it was a large tumor that had grown in my colon. And I just remember being like, oh, I have to wait for these results. And then my doctor called and he goes, so pathology came back and it is cancer. Please come to my office right away for the next steps. And you are never prepared to hear that, but in the same sense, I knew. Like I knew this whole time. I knew I had been saying colon cancer since September, October. So it's like, it wasn't like this was new information. I was like, yeah, that checks out. Like that, everything checks out. So I just remember I sat up immediately because I was laying down when I got the phone call and I sat up immediately. And I was like, okay, do I just come now? And he was like, yeah, come now. The things just start going in your mind. How long did I let this go? Like, did I not fight hard enough for myself? Like my symptoms have been going on since September of last year. Like, surely it's all over my body by now. Your brain starts going like this. And we get into the office and he gives me all my paperwork. He gives me, the next steps. He goes, I'm going to refer you to a surgeon. If the cancer has spread, you will need chemo. If it's localized, we'll just, it'll just be surgery. It was very like all at once, like the same day I heard the diagnosis, like a lot of information. I'm like, okay. And I just remember being looked at by everyone in the office as I was leaving, like all the secretaries and all the, admin people. They're looking at me like I have 6 heads. Like, here's a girl who was just diagnosed with cancer, and like, I'm just like, okay, like, bye. And then you get a lot of, we're praying for you. And that's like, as nice as that is, when you just get diagnosed and you hear a bunch of people saying we're praying for you, you're like, oh, this is going to be a whole thing. This is scary. Yeah. So that was the day I was diagnosed.